Brogan, we are 8 months into 2023, and I have one thing to say.
What's up?
There are too many goddamn games right now.
It's too much. It's literally too much. They need to stop. And like I see the Baldur's Gate 3 hype and I'm like, yo. And then it's also like a bajillion hour game where people are still not
Yeah.
done with it. I'm like, yo, please
And you want to
stop.
play it multiple times because there's like all this like different things you can do and just oh my like I don't have time. Baldur's Gate 3, that's a 2024 game. That's a 2024 game.
2023 is too girthy. You know what I'm saying? Is way I can't fit it into my schedule. Is it possible?
It's just too many games. Like for instance, I only just beat Tears of the Kingdom.
How did you feel about that?
Yeah, a little underwhelmed. Kind of more than a little underwhelmed.
A little less than underwhelmed. What is that?
More than a little underwhelmed.
Super underwhelmed, ultra underwhelmed.
A little between a little and moderately underwhelmed.
Okay, let me ask you. Were you when what was the point of the game where you were like, "Okay, I'm losing it."
I I think it was the final like area. So I kind of I don't really know if you want to say like ruined or how you want to phrase it. I sequence broke. Like
I mean, I think that's
uh,
part of this game. Sure, go
understandably
ahead.
like sizable chunk of the game.
In
Like
what
there's a
way?
whole I don't did we want to get like spoilery or
Yeah, as far as I understand, if I remember right, you like the last sage dungeon you did out of murder, right? Is that what
basically
happened?
there's a whole thing where there's a series of like sky islands, a whole like puzzle area that's like concealed by a storm, and you have to do a whole quest line to like clear the storm, and you can
But
see
you
the
didn't
way.
clear the storm and you just did it.
No, I basically made a wind cycle and flew above the clouds to where they unrendered, and I could just
Hmm.
see the islands, and I said that one looks important and dove onto it, and I found the thing.
Oh, well, but was that fun though?
I mean, it was fun in the fact that I sequence broke, but like I don't really know if there's like any sort of narrative setup or like I'm
There
sure
was
with
a
a big
I will say
a,
there was a lot of narrative set up for that. Like if that's what you're missing from the game, you would have been satisfied by that. Because there's like an entire thing of like clues, and you gotta like wear like a
yeah.
suit for it, and like you have to read shit. It's fun.
Yeah, and the whole getting the master sword as well. I don't really know because all the guides I was reading were like, "Oh, it's like along the way you're getting all these clues about where the master sword is." I just got all the memories and then like, "Hey, that dragon looks like it has something on it. I'll fly up to it." And I just did it right away. Like I had
Yeah,
enough stamina.
yeah. The memory. I mean, number one, it doesn't require a lot of stamina, and then the memories kind of give it away after a certain point. So
Yeah.
no, I mean, but like, is that where you were underwhelmed, or like, what was the
N-
part was like, what the
no,
fuck is
but
this?
no, it was genuinely going into the final area because I got the fifth stage, I got the Master Sword, I got all the stages. It was like, okay, time to go fight Ganondorf. And I was like, is it really? There's no. We're just going? And I guess that's
Mhm.
kind of how Breath of the Wild was too.
Yeah.
Um, but I thought there was going to be like. I don't. See, I'm not really sure ultimately what I expected, but I didn't expect it to just be the first thing I thought of. Does that make sense? Like I didn't think it was just going to be like, "Oh, where's Ganondorf? He's in the hole. He's in the hole from the start of the game. Go to the hole." You know?
I mean, the thing is like I think this game is a marriage between Breath of the Wild and the more linear, eventful Zeldas. And I think that was a compromise because I was the opposite. I was like, please just tell me where Ganon is.
Mhm.
And then at a certain point in time, it's like, oh, it's here. You're ready for it whenever. And I was like, that's great. That's exactly what I wanted. Where
Yeah, it
as opposed to Breath of the Wild, where it's like you're told immediately where Ganon is, and then that's the whole game setup. I do understand the idea of like, well, there's no setup for it now. It's just there when you get to it, you know?
yeah, it just didn't really like for a game that was really and whether this was Nintendo's like real to sell it on the idea of like dungeons are back, you know,
Yeah.
because they were a little coy with that. But for the final stretch of the game to just be this ugly, well lit hole that's just
Hmm.
like a gauntlet of
Yeah.
enemies and gloom.
Yeah.
When you look at all the other like temples in the game, like the fire temple, which you can cheese out, but it's got like this whole minecart thing, and it's real fun to explore. The flying wind ship that's like covered in ice. The water temple, which is like not great, but it's like this flying like weather temple with low gravity
Yeah.
and things like that. And then the the area Ganondorf is just an ugly hole in the
Well,
ground.
I mean, I mean, we're getting really nitpicky here, but if you want to broaden
I'm
the
just
scope in
trying
a
to
second, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just trying to put words to why I think I was underwhelmed.
Let me ask you: do you feel the same way about Hyrule Castle and Breath of the Wild?
No, because that was still like that still had a level of tension to like explore around in. Like, yeah, you could just beeline it, but the beelining wasn't always safe or clear. Well, with all the guardians flying about and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, but
Um,
whereas here everything doesn't feel like, I mean, there are things to explore and items to get down below, but it's not the same way as Hyrule Castle. You know what I
I
mean?
think
I get that.
I think what like shocked me the most, and I will say I'll say flat out, the fight with Ganondorf is probably like the best fight with Ganondorf in the entire franchise. I will admit that. It's a cool fight. It has like so many twists. It has a comedic health bar, an
Yeah.
intentionally comedic health bar, and things like that. But the fact that the final area, the final boss fight, only came down to just combat, really,
Yeah.
kind of surprised me. Like, we're not going to do anything with Zonai devices. We're not going to do anything with like the dark and using bright bloom seeds to like illuminate an area. We're not going to do anything with the rewind, with ascend, with any of the powers. That
Well,
really baffled me because it feels like it doesn't feel like a culmination of all the game's mechanics in the way I thought it was building up to. Like if you were playing a Pokemon game, and you know, with all the options a Pokemon game has, and we'll talk about Pokemon games later in the episode, don't you
oh,
worry, dear
oh,
listener. And
okay.
you got to the final like the champion, and he's like, I only use electric types. That would feel underwhelming because it's like, oh, okay, I'll just use ground types. I'm not going to use any other types. It's just ground types because that's the
Murph,
answer.
I don't know how to tell you this. I use like the six same Pokemon. I overlevel them and I have them tackle the entire time. The game's baby easy. Pokemon's bad. Anyways, all right, let's talk about Zelda real quick. Um,
Okay.
I know what you're feeling. I think the issue here is I don't want that. Does that make
Okay.
sense? I am the opposite. I am like,
You
why
feel
why would I build something to fight Ganon? I understand those
it,
things, but like in contrast, there are multiple bosses in this that do test these other things, like the Yiga clan boss or whatever the fucking boss is for the fifth sage. You know,
yeah.
like all these things do have these culminations of these different principles. So the Ganon fight is just a straight up test. And admittedly, there is one thing that you're leaving out, which is the gloom. Because of the gloom, you need to at least have Sundelions or some way to solve the gloom max HP problem.
The
But
fact
otherwise,
that everything down there is gloom based did kind of tick me off. Like,
I like gloom as a mechanic. But I mean, if you're asking for a gimmick and a problem to solve, that would be it.
but it just feels like of all the gimmicks in the game, I don't know, to me gloom is like the least.
I disagree. I think it's one of the. I think it's an essential but underlying, because it's in the depths, problem. But it matches the depths as a place of difficulty, etc., etc. The thing is I didn't want to have to use Zonai things to solve a problem
Mm-hmm.
ever. And I
Yeah.
did use them for bosses, like, you know, the fucking pollution Mario Sunshine boss? I
Yeah.
beat that boss with, like, I build a machine to spurt water everywhere. And I have that, like, home around him. And then that's how I
Yeah.
beat him. I don't want to be forced to do that.
But
Ever.
it's not really so much a matter of force as feels like it's not even in the conversation for the
Okay.
final area and the final boss. Because, like, I tried using different weapons. I tried using, some ranged stuff to fight Ganon. It all does piddly damage compared to the Master Sword. They
Yeah.
want you to do the mono-y-mono sword fight. And again,
Yeah.
it is a cool fight, but it just doesn't feel like it feels like the end of a Twilight Princess or a Wind Waker. It doesn't feel like the end of a Tears of the Kingdom. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think the answer to
Like,
that is Tears of the Kingdom is different things to different people. Because I think your
mm,
Tears of the Kingdom is different than my Tears of the Kingdom.
mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Um, I think most shocking is like the powers, really. Like, you know what? I could leave behind the Zonai devices, but I'm really shocked there was not like I was thinking like, okay, they're gonna do the dead man's volley, but instead of smacking it back with your sword, you're gonna use a rewind on it. You know,
Mhm.
or something like that, or there's going to be a moment where you're going to have to, like, I don't know, fuse a thing with a thing in a climactic moment or something, or you're going to have to use ascend to rise to the surface of Hyrule real quick because Ganondorf got out of the hole. um
Hmm.
and none of that happened. Or like I was even like, for sure, like, oh, he's going to make the arena real dark. He's going to be like prowling around in the darkness, and you're going to have to like throw down a bunch of bright bloom seeds, and that's going to be dynamic and interesting. But that didn't happen. It was just a sword fight, and I don't
There
know.
are
That
other
just
bosses
felt,
that do that though. Everything
yeah.
you just said is in another boss fight.
I get, yeah. It's just I didn't do those boss fights,
Well, okay. Well, then there we go.
and there's ultimately the issue with a game this open.
Yeah.
Um,
How many hours did you put into it?
I think something around 40 to 50 ish. Like I got all five stages. I got the Master Sword. I did the Koga quest.
Mm,
There were a lot of threads I left hanging because I just
sure.
couldn't really feel.
Bother to do. I mean, no. Like I
Yeah,
by hour 90, I was like, yo, it's time to wrap this shit up.
yeah.
I
Like I was,
totally
I
agree.
was, I was compelled by like the stable musicians quest, but the fact
Hmm.
that it was like quests on quests, all to
Yeah.
get like access to the Great Fairies. Like it just there's a lot of quest gating in this game for things
Yeah.
that Breath of the Wild just let you do because you found them.
Yes, and I mean, like that's an excellent example of like the Great Fairy has like a flat fee in Breath of the Wild, whereas
Hmm.
here is like you got to go through things, and I mean, it's such a hard balance because Tears of the Kingdom wants to have its cake and eat it too with like traditional Zelda things, and then have
Hmm.
the creativity and openness of like a Breath of the Wild too. So then we hit these moments where it's like I don't want these quests forced down my throat, but also without the structure, the game gets ugly at points. You know what I mean? And this is such a big
Hmm.
fucking game.
Yeah, I think it's ultimately I'm walking away preferring Breath of the Wild.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I think a lot of people have those feelings.
Breath of the Wild feels like just enough. Where this, oddly, I feel like I wish they would have just like actually committed in saying and restricting down the open-endedness and being like, no, no, this is a game about Zonai devices, or this is a game about the depths, you know. And it's like cool that all that's involved, but at the end of the day, the fact you can so easily ignore huge swaths of it, I don't know, something about that doesn't quite sit right for me for a Zelda game in a way I can't really articulate.
I see. I don't care. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's cool. I think that's cool because I mean I'm also the type of person that's like I like in Dark Souls where there's entire levels or giant content obscured and you have to like figure it out. Like the burden is on the player to want these things or desire these things. And again, if they stuck to one thing, I think that is an old way to make Zelda. And I think both of us need to adjust expectations accordingly, especially for Breath of the Wild 3 Electric Beagle. You know what I'm saying?
Do you think there will be a Breath of the Wild 3?
No, I think they're well. I mean, they have said that the direction of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom is the future of Zelda.
Mm.
But I don't think they will like use the same map again or anything.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say, in like 10 years when Nintendo has released the Switch It Up or whatever, the new console,
Okay.
and they're like, and we're bringing over the HD 4K remaster of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, I will most likely be at a time where I'm like, oh god, I'll play those again,
Yeah.
front to back. I'll play those all the way through again, and probably have brand new feelings about them.
You see, here's the one thing I will say that's like super in favor of Breath of the Wild is like I played Breath of the Wild in prep for Tears of the Kingdom, and even now I'm like, oh man, Breath of the Wild, I could play that again sometime. Tears of the Kingdom, I don't think I want to play that shit for like 5 years.
I think, and it is like, we joked about it at the top of the episode, but I think it absolutely is a consequence of releasing in a year where we are awash in good video games and big video games.
Yeah.
If this came out in a rink-a-dink year like, I don't know, 2021,
Yeah.
and I
Would
had
be
more
different.
time to like sit with it and let it breathe, I think I'd be walking away a lot more satisfied because I would have done more.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say I rushed this. I kind of just let it fall by the wayside, and then it occurred to me like, oh, I should probably beat that.
Yeah. No, no, and but I mean that's always like now it's a burden. Now it's like now you have to complete it, and then it just gets less fun. No, I totally get it. And like at a certain point in time, Zelda needs to have a sort of thing to get you going. You know what I mean? I don't know. I understand your problems with it. For me, as it stands, weeks after recording everything's and playing through and letting it sit in my mind, I think I still really appreciate and respect Tears of the Kingdom. I think it has a lot of pluses and a lot of benefits, or a lot of minuses. It's a mixed bag. It's much more of a mixed bag than the essential pure Breath of the Wild, where Breath of the Wild's only problem was variety. Here it's a lot more just like when you get something, it both is cool and bad at the same time.
It's kind of last year the big game was like Elden Ring, and that was another game where I kind of like walked away exhausted by it.
Yeah.
And here I'm exhausted by like all the stuff I didn't do, and that's like weighing on me. But I also can't build up the want to go back now that I have beaten it.
Yeah.
Because it's like I'm thinking like, God, there's so much of the depths I didn't explore. I never found like that cool boss Brendan talked about. I never got the anti-slip armor.
Wait, yes you did. You probably did. He was talking about Phantom Ganon.
Oh, okay. Well then, yes, I did do Phantom Ganon.
Phantom Ganon's sick though. Anyways.
It's a neat fight.
Anyways.
All right. So you have played a game that has been shrouded in mystery and in this weird sort of development, not exactly hell, but a weird half-life for many years now. Tell me about the System Shock remake.
The game is good. I think the
Good because it's System Shock, or
it reminded me how much I prefer this to what BioShock became. I think I like the more immersive sim elements. And this game is not like fully on immersive sim, but there is a lot there regarding inventory management and all your options that just feels really satisfying. What I particularly enjoy is the maps. The maps of System Shock 1 Remake are labyrinthian and very engaging. I just fucking love it. And I love I like its weapon system of you're going through and you're scrounging for resources for everything, but then there's like a reliable energy source to where if you have an energy weapon, you can use that and you just have to refill that. So like there's just this nice balance of everything. My biggest complaint is honestly like a BioShock thing of like I don't like vibe chambers. Does that make sense?
you don't like the instant resurrection. You would prefer a consequence to death.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean there is like a if you die on a floor without you have to turn on the Vita chambers basically. That's like the gimmick. So like you find the
Okay.
room to turn it on and then you're good to go. But
It's your
even then,
bonfire.
yeah, exactly. But even then I'm like no, thank you, please. We need to drop this. I also don't like the hacking. The hacking is weird.
Is that
It
I did play the demo. It's that weird like it's almost like Star Fox 64.
Yes, it's like Star Fox 64 meets like Tron shit. And it doesn't really sit with me. I Brendan had a lot of problems with like the projectiles going. I never had shooting problems with it, but it's not preferable. I don't love it.
Mhm. But so how far into it are you? I see. I've never played System Shock. It's just one of those like legendary games.
Well, we should play it sometime. We would play System Shock 2 if we ever do it. I
Okay.
mean, like I just beat the medical. I've been going super slowly because of all the other games I've been playing. But like,
Mhm.
or like, I beat medical, and then one after that, fucking what is it? I also played this game fucking 2 weeks ago. So like, because we
Okay.
kept delaying this game too. Um,
This big meaty game.
this big meaty game. So I'll probably go back to it and keep playing it. But in terms of things, I completely beat the medical stage, and then I went to the next stage, and I'm like 80% through it. I could tell because I've like explored most of the fucking map, but now I'm just like I'm lost, but I like being lost because when you go into the little nooks and crannies, I like crawling into the vents and like just finding it. It's fun. I don't know. It's a
So,
fun game, and
so
I also like the
remake,
enemies. Go ahead.
as a remake, how modern does it feel? Like, is this like strictly a graphical thing, or did they actually like from the ground up? I'm assuming because of the visuals, but like from the ground up, did they like tweak the gameplay or tweak the level design? Did they fix things with
Well, I
this,
mean,
or does
I
it
mean,
retain?
I have not played System Shock 1. I have only played System Shock 2.
Okay, okay.
But that being said, you need only look at system. Have you looked at a System Shock 1 screenshot?
Yes, I have.
It's not pretty.
No.
Um, I think I mean the visual overhaul alone is a lot. It feels modern in gameplay, but I think according to Brendan, the maps are exactly the same, and the maps feel the same. Like the
Mm,
maps feel dense in a sort of unforgiving way. Does that make
mm,
sense?
yeah. Does it scratch that immersive sim itch?
N- no, because it's not about the systems necessarily. It much more scratch here. I would say anything immersive sim about it is meant to give me a second to articulate this. Typically, when you play an immersive sim and you're really getting the itch for it, you are appreciating very specific systems that make it feel like a built world. Does that make
Mm-hmm.
sense?
Can I solve a problem where I'm supposed to shoot a guy with instead stacking up a bunch of boxes and jumping over a thing?
Yeah, some shit like that, right? But here, I think the immersive sim elements are instead complementary to the base level of like but let's put it this way, this is 10 bajillion times better than Dead Space. It would be like it serves to immerse you more than a Dead Space can. Does that make sense? That is the purpose of
Yes.
the immersive sim elements.
Okay, I see, I see.
Where you are constantly thinking about inventory, whereas I didn't think jack shit about an inventory in Dead Space. Blah blah
Yes.
blah blah blah. Or like the audio logs. The audio logs feel very Bioshocky, but it all works. Like you hear the little politics of the ship, and obviously the threatening aura of Shodan. And Shodan is pretty fucking scary. So I mean, I don't know. I love it. It's a really good game. If I keep playing it, honestly, it will probably be like top 5 of the year.
That's I completely forgot it even released this year. And I'm seeing like it came out end of May.
Yeah.
Like I think it just got utterly eclipsed, which is weird because like I said, this remake has been in development for quite a while. I
Oh yeah.
remember seeing about like back in high school a trailer for it, like a
Hmm.
gameplay demo for it.
Oh yeah. Um I love it, and I this goes back to like my BioShock problem of like I think BioShock made things too simple. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
By Infinite, you're like, I am not a baby. Please don't treat me like a baby. You
Yeah,
know?
it's weird. Like I remember the E3 gameplay demos for BioShock, and it's stuff like when enemies are in the water, you can electrocute it to deal damage to them, and people were like, "Oh my god, this game's so immersive. It has so many ways of solving problems."
Yeah, and it's like, okay, dude.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know what it is. Point is, we already had a BioShock episode. We'll never have another BioShock episode ever again.
No, we
I
covered the
declare.
good one.
We covered the good one. That's what matters. Murph, you've played another game, haven't you? You played a
You know what?
Pokemon game, right?
I played a game about science gone wrong. Yes, I've played a Pokemon game, but not an
Oh my
official
gosh.
one. I have been playing Pokemon Infinite Fusions.
All right, Murph, tell me about this Infinite Fusions. What sort of madness is this?
Okay, so I, I don't remember when this became popular, but there was like a website that went up that was like Pokemon Fusions, where you could put in two different Pokemon and it would mix the sprites together and like the Pokedex entry and stuff and make like a, for most of them rather garish looking sprite.
Sure.
But some people were like, hey, what if that was like an actual mechanic in a Pokemon game? And so, from the ground up in RPG Maker, this is not a ROM hack. This is made like wholly in RPG Maker. Um, a full-fledged Pokemon game where fusing together your Pokemon is a mechanic. And what's great about this is, um, yeah, they use the auto-generated sprites, but also a lot of the fusions have custom artwork done. And it
Mm.
will actually let you know before you do a fusion, like, hey, this one's auto-generated, this one will be a custom sprite. And it's usually for a lot of things that hold on, let me lost my train of thought. It's the custom sprites are sometimes like clever references or in jokes. Like if you fuse a Ralts with an Arcanine, you get a Full Metal Alchemist reference
Yeah.
that if you can think of it, you can guess what it is. Or it's something like you fuse a Voltorb with a Blastoise, you get a Blastoise with like Voltorb's red and white color scheme,
That's
and just
cool.
sort of things like that.
I've
Um,
seen some of these. I've seen some gameplay of this.
uh
I've
huh.
seen you play, and
I
you've made some horrifying creations.
Yeah, some of them are horrifying, some of them are funny, some of them look stupid. It runs the gambit. I liked when you hopped into my stream and are like, so do you do things with your fusions or do you just make them?
Yeah, how fun is the game when you're not making these things?
So it is basically the Kanto region, and later you can do Johto as well. It's actually a prequel to Pokemon Red, which is funny. I only just realized that because they make like references to events in like setting up for like red and silver and gold, which was
Mhm.
odd to me. Um, but you do the 8 gems, the Elite Four, and things like that. There's an original like Team Rocket plot where they're trying to unlock triple fusions by fusing together like the three legendary birds.
Mhm.
Um, and you can run around and encounter trainers who will have their own Pokemon fusions. The game is very good about only showing you the custom sprites rather than the ugly auto-generated ones. Um, they've input it's basically all of Gen 1 and Gen 2 in terms of what you can catch, and then they've added some from later gens that they know people would be like interested in doing a fusion with. Like in Gen 6 they introduced a sword Pokemon, Honedge, and
Sure.
so naturally he is in this game, and you get him via a Zelda reference.
There you
Um,
go.
and so you can just like fuse Pikachu with your Honedge, and it's Pikachu with a sword in its mouth.
That makes sense. That's cool.
Things like that. Um, and it's and that's just like the surface level because there's a lot of like quality of life features that the devs put into this that are kind of like I never like to say like what I would or wouldn't want in a Pokemon game because to me Pokemon as a franchise is so much more than the games itself, and also their primary demographic is children. So it's like,
I want to ask one thing so you can finish this thought. This is not a ROM hack, right? This is an RPG Maker game, correct?
yes.
Okay, continue.
So, so they do things like you can rematch every trainer you encounter, and actually, the more you rematch them, their Pokemon will get stronger and even evolve. Um, some trainers, like after you beat them, will give you items, or even like if you beat a Pokemon breeder, they'll give you a free egg. There's a quest system. Every town has a hotel where you can go in and people will give you quests, like saying like, "Hey, can you eliminate all the crabbies on the beach so I can go have a nice day at the beach," and things like that. Um, there's you can get items that take the place of HMs. Like you can get a rock hammer, and now you can smash rocks without needing to give any Pokemon the horrible move Rock Smash.
Yeah.
You can get a lantern, and that takes the place of the HM Flash. And it's just cool, and it's like probably the most fun I've had with a Pokemon game in a while. And it's also the fusion mechanic really incentivizes you to catch Pokemon that I wouldn't otherwise catch because I kind of metagame to a degree, so I know which Pokemon are good and bad in terms of stats, in terms of typing. But now I'm thinking like that Pokemon has a cool color scheme or motif. I'd kind of want to catch that and see what kind of creatures I can make when I fuse it with a Pokemon I like. Like a Magcargo is the lava slug Pokemon. It's a blob of magma with a rock shell. It's not very good. It's kind of ugly, but you fuse that with a Gengar and it makes like an evil meteorite that's leaking lava, and that looks cool as shit.
There you go. That's what it's all about. Is looking cool.
Yeah. And, for those that are like, oh, this game designed for children is too easy for me, the game is hard. The game is very hard because you'll go into
That's because this one isn't made for children. This one is made for fans of Pokemon that can download an RPG Maker game.
Yes, absolutely. This is like the ultimate fan tribute in a lot of ways. But, you'll go into a gym, and it's like, okay, this is the fire type gym, except they're not just using fire types. They're fire types fused, like, in a way to cover the weaknesses of fire types. And you can get, like, thrown off and surprised by a lot of things. I think it's a really neat game, and I would not be shocked to see it on my end of the year 10, because it's surprisingly got a lot of content to it.
Did it release this year?
I saw a lot of people playing it this year. I think this has been in development. Let me double check. Yes, this has been like a work in progress since 2015, and it is considered fully released this year.
Okay. It's one of those.
Yeah, because I think originally...
Caves of Quad is, in fact, Game of the Year 2023. As is Dwarf Fortress.
Coming out. At Dwarf Fortress. Yeah, that also came out, didn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Too girthy of games, Continue.
No, that's just I think if you are a Pokemon fan, go out and try this, dear listener, because I think you will have fun, and it may reignite feelings you forgot you had for the franchise.
There you go. Amazing.
And also get it before Nintendo shuts it down.
Yeah, they'll probably. We'll see. Usually they shut it down when it's like, oh, we have a thing just like it. Please don't make a Metroid 2 remake. We have a Metroid 2 remake.
That's fair. So you're excited for the Mother 3, what is it, the remothered?
They didn't take that down.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I told you. They have that the Mother 3 translation has been around for like over 12 years, and they 100% know about it because Reggie Fils-Aimé's talked about it. They don't take it down. Do you know why? Because Mother 3's not coming out anytime soon.
Okay, that's fair. Well, in this year of big, girthy, meaty games, tell me about Slipstream Blue Hour.
Okay, so disclaimer, Slipstream is not a game that released in 2023. This game released, I think, in like 2017 or something like that. However, This is one of those that's like after like 8 years or whatever, the developer's like, what if I come out with a new update and it's free? And you're like, ooh. And so the base game is basically like one of those I don't know how to say it other
It
than
looks like
Mode
Cruising
7.
USA.
It's Cruising USA. It's Outrun specifically, or like Hang On, or these games where it's like it got the moving track and you move your car to it. It's a much more vibes focused game. It's heavy into the soundtrack and the colors. It feels really good. Um, and I would say that the DLC is very interesting because it feels like a hint towards a sequel. Does that make sense? I think
Okay.
I think the way the developer said it was is this is the future of Slipstream. And playing it at first you're going to be like, "What?" And then seeing it you're like, "Oh, I kind of get this." Is instead of these very fake Sega-esque arcade scenarios, now we have more like watercolor or impressionistic depictions of real life European locations.
That is the
And
future of Slipstream.
that is the future of Slipstream. Like to me, it's like it's less arcadey and much more in terms of like the mood. Like a big part of this game is like um just getting into the zone. You're meant to like obviously because of the name,
It's a groove getter.
it's a groove getter. There you go. You're meant to be behind somebody, and when you're behind somebody enough, you slipstream, so you go faster, and then you can pass them. So like,
Okay.
and especially in the different modes, you sort of just cruise into the next map. You don't have a switch over. Sometimes you're literally just like driving, the map's done, and then you're just driving into the next map. Or there's a fork in the road, and that fork in the road determines your next level. And these sort of things just blend in really nicely. And again, for the new DLC, which is free, the music feels great. There's new cars. And the new cars are a little bit more intensive in terms of what they can and can't do. And I don't know, man. It feels realer. And even though there's one that's wacky, it's a Transylvania map. But even then, it's not wacky. It's the only way to say it feels like a like an impressionistic, artistic, uh, arcade sense instead of much more tropical, much more fun loving. Does that make sense? It's a blue hour.
Yeah.
Blue hour sets the tone.
Okay. Yeah, that checks out. Like I am comparing the pictures from the DLC to this, and it's definitely a very. It looks less like the games we used to describe it. It looks less like Hang On or Cruising USA,
Yes. Yep.
and
And it feels
there's
like its
something
own
more
identity.
painterly about.
Yes. Yeah. So in my head, what this is a sort of testing ground for the future of Slipstream when a Slipstream 2 comes out. So
Okay.
exciting stuff.
I do have fond memories of Cruising USA. I had the pizza place my family used to frequent because a friend of the family owned it, had a Cruising USA cabinet. And I wouldn't have the quarters to sit down and play, but I would just sit in the driver's seat and watch the little like cinematics, the gameplay demo.
Are you ready for the variety minute?
We have one more game.
What's the other game?
We have to talk about Pikmin 4, the
Oh
best
my
Nintendo
God.
game released this year.
Oh my god. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Pikmin 4 is the I love Pikmin. I love Pikmin a lot. I really love Pikmin 2.
Oh, that's
This,
right. You're like a huge Pikmin fan. I forgot. You're like the
Yes.
number one fan. Pikmin 2, greatest game of all time.
I
Murph.
am the number one Pikmin boy. And
Wow.
this is so Pikmin 3 is a sequel to Pikmin 1. Pikmin 4 is a sequel to Pikmin 2. That is the best way to phrase it. Whereas 1 and 3 are more about the time element and like perfecting your like playthrough and optimizing it. These are much more about the exploration and like the discovery of the world of Pikmin. But along the way, Pikmin 4 also still takes the time to like pose you those time-oriented challenges. So like you have the caves, right, from like Pikmin 2, which
Sure.
were like really the meat of Pikmin 2. I view Pikmin 2 a lot as the hub. The individual areas are really more like hubs, and the true levels are the caves that you find there, and you're trying to optimize your path to as many caves in a day as you can.
I see.
This has the caves, but then it also has Dandori challenges and Dandori battles. And Dandori is a term that's like thrown around a lot in the game. It basically refers to like optimizing your time management skills. Um,
Okay.
and so the Dandori challenges are basically challenge mode from Pikmin 3 Deluxe. It's like, here are some set Pikmin for you. Try to get all the treasures and kill all the beasts within this like set area within a time limit, and you'll get medals based on how well you do. And then the Dandori battles are, we're going to put you up against a CPU who also has their own squad of Pikmin, and you're competing for points. Like, can you collect more treasures before this guy does? They give you all these like twists on that. Like you can get power ups, or there's like one where you have to like do a tug of war with a bomb back and forth and try to deliver it to the other guy's onion, and like destroy their base of operations.
That's cool. And that also sounds like it enhances the RTS elements more.
Yeah, and it's like has so many different flavors, and it's like each Pikmin game is kind of about like just collecting the one thing. In Pikmin 1, it's collecting the ship parts. Pikmin 2,
Mm-hmm.
it's the treasure. Pikmin 3, it's the fruit. Here, you are collecting treasures. You are collecting castaways. You are collecting glow sap, which has its own thing. Like I didn't even get into the night battles.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's a big game, and just when you think it's done, then it doubles in length. Like, you know
Oh
the
my
point in
goodness.
Pikmin 2 where it's like, oh, you're done, you've hit the credits? Oh, nope, we gotta go back.
Yeah.
This does that twice.
Oh my goodness.
So you think there are 4 areas? Psych, it's actually 6.
Wow. Damn.
And each area is actually like doubled because you have the night expeditions. And what the night expeditions are is basically like full on RTS StarCraft, where you
Mm-hmm.
are optimizing collection of resources to gain more Pikmin so that you can defend a certain point. It's just about combat.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like really cool and gets like kind of scary. Like the music in the game can get really intense, and they bring back a lot of fan favorite creatures and bosses. We
Yeah.
got the Water Wraith, my man. We got the Smoky Prog, my man. We got the Emperor Bullbacks, my man.
Ooh, he's back.
I know.
Um, let me ask you. So you're saying all of what it does new.
hmm
How does it fit into your heart?
So it's one of those Smash Ultimate, Elden Ring, Arkham Knight scenarios where it definitely feels like the culmination of everything that came before it. Like there is not almost like no elements from prior games that is not left unused, unreferenced, like in some capacity. Um, but at the same time, I wouldn't really put it as the best of the franchise. In fact, I'm not really sure where it would fall because each game of Pikmin is such a different flavor. Because you've got the more tight, like time nuanced thing of Pikmin 1, which I can totally get people being like, who are purely about gameplay, would be more down for. You have the more like sort of story light and loose driven thing of Pikmin 2, and then the absolutely gorgeous and like super optimized Pikmin 3. And then you have this, which is trying to be all of those at once. So it's a big game, and I think it is definitely one of my favorite releases of this year. Something I did not expect to shoot to the top of my list so quickly. But I think ultimately I still prefer Pikmin 2. Maybe even
Okay.
Pikmin 3. Like I said, it's one of those cases where like each one does what they do so well, and what they each do is something that feels completely different. I don't know, but what I do know is that I love Ochi, the dog, so much. I did not
Isn't there a
expect.
green one?
That's Moss. That's the homophobic one.
Oh.
Um, I take it you didn't see that meme.
No.
Okay, well, I'll just
He
leave
has
you in
some
the dark.
explaining to do. The
I
Moss one just got
we
canceled.
we found some old tweets. Like we found some old tweets
Okay.
from Moss's Twitter account.
It's
Um,
milkshake duck all over again.
yeah, I did not expect to have Pikmin with a dog to be such a gameplay change up, but it is, and it effectively works as a second captain. And you can level up Ochi. This game has RPG mechanics where you can level up or build new gear for you and Ochi. In fact, it has like you can rescue castaways, and there are a lot of castaways in this. Like a lot. Every time you think you've gotten all the castaways, there are more castaways to be found, and they all do different things for you. They mainly give you quests, and it's kind of like an achievement tracker. Like this guy's like, oh, I would really love it if you made 1,000 Pikmin, and then you make 1,000 Pikmin. And he's like, oh man, it'd be really cool if you made 5,000 Pikmin. And then at each tier, he'll give you a little reward. But Ochi is just like a perfect design. He looks like a stress toy, like you squeeze him, his eyes will bug out. But he is kind of the heart and soul of the game. There are so many cute little like animations that happen just in your periphery. Like if you really stop to look at like the Pikmin as they do things, listen to the little songs they hum, watch like the little like motions Ochi will do when he's idling, like he'll roll around, he'll lie down, he'll look around at the world and wonder. It's a very technically impressive game, and I can't wait to see it upscaled for Nintendo's next console that they're definitely releasing in 2024.
I think it's also important that like those animations make the game feel more alive. I hear
Mm-hmm.
concerns. I've seen other people complain about this, talking about making things feel alive. Is that the creatures don't respawn in this game? Correct?
Yes, that is something that like, I didn't catch on until later. Is like, yeah, the overworld creatures do not respawn.
So
Um,
how does that feel? Or is that wasn't a problem if you noticed it super late?
yeah, I think it kind of feeds into the idea of like clearing an area. Like you get it 100% completed, and so it is kind of relief to just clear out the creatures, come back for the loot the subsequent day, because the days do feel like they go by a little quick, and that is factored into the fact that when you go underground, time does not stop above ground. It's kind of like it moves at 1/4 speed deal. So you can go into a cave and pop out, and it's already like dusk, and you have to gather up your Pikmin. Um, it definitely leaves a lot of those classic elements where you will like set Pikmin to do a task and then walk away and set some other Pikmin to do a task. Because when you go into a cave, all your Pikmin automatically like jump to you, and everything they were carrying, everything they were doing is just left on the ground. And so you'll pop out of a cave and be like, "Oh crap, what's where? What's like where did I leave things?" But that's not really so much a concern because you can hop on Ochi and ride him around, and he's really quick, and so you can get from point to point really good. Uh, which is useful because a lot of these levels are huge, and they're not only huge, they're vertical. Like there's a house, like you go in a house with a kitchen and a table, and you can climb up on the counters and collect things there, and there's caves
Specifically
there.
using Ochi, right?
Yeah, using Ochi.
So Ochi is like not only this co-pilot, this co-captain, but
Mhm.
it's also a mount that can climb and run around. Because like I'm just thinking of it in the brutal legend terms of like if there's a lot of space to cover, both vertically and horizontally, you need something to compensate for it. So I'm glad that Ochi is the perfect mount for the scope of the game.
Yeah, and you can upgrade Ochi, like I said. So, like, initially, Ochi can't go in bodies of water. He will drown. His drowning animation is horrific. But you can upgrade him and give him the skill to swim, and he'll do a little doggy paddle. But you can
Oh,
upgrade him to swim faster. Then you can upgrade him to dive, and he can go down and retrieve underwater treasures that you may have used for blue Pikmin, but it might be more efficient to send Ochi and have your blue Pikmin do something else. And that really comes in handy for the Dandori challenges, where your utilization of Ochi is almost like more, if not just as important, sorry, just as, if not more important, than your use of Pikmin.
do you think do you think there will be DLC, and what do you think that will look like?
I'm honestly not sure because the game kind of it does leave itself open. It's weird in that I'm not entirely sure. I can't place if this is actually a reboot or this is just takes place before 3. Um cuz it kind of look cuz it's basically Olimar is on the planet of the Pikmin. He crashes and his ship parts get scattered all over the planet. That's the setup. That's the framing device. And you are sent in to rescue him. You are part of the rescue corps.
Okay.
Um, so it's kind of almost like the bad ending from Pikmin 1 is canon, and you're following through on that. Because spoilers for the first hour of the game. It's not like it's really a twist or reveal. Olimar has turned into a Pikmin, and he's turning other people into Pikmin.
Oh my goodness. What a
Uh,
spoiler.
yeah. Um, and he's being egged on by Moss. So Moss
Mm.
was like problematic from the start, not just the homophobia, but
It's an abrasive attitude.
yeah, a toxic personality to be around for sure.
Yeah.
A DLC, I could see them doing DLC for this. I guess it's just in the back of my mind, I am starting to believe the rumors that Nintendo has a new console coming. So I could almost see them doing like a Pikmin 4 Deluxe, like they did with Pikmin 3.
Another console?
I think it's a matter of the Switch is starting to show its age, and I can only get my Joy-Cons repaired for drift so many times. You know?
Maybe.
I
I don't
would
know.
just.
In my head, I'm like, I don't want another Switch. Like, it obviously depends on how much is backwards compatible and how much of the new releases are going to be tailored for the new system versus the old system. But I feel like I wouldn't want something to replace the Switch. I don't think, especially if it's like different. If it's just Ultra Switch 2, maybe. But like, I don't know. I don't think power was ever one of Nintendo's biggest focuses. So it just being the thing that needs fixed, I'm like, eh. Especially now. I don't know. That's my take.
Mm-hmm. I think. I think from like a game developer standpoint, the devs probably have a lot of ideas that would be more viable with a more powerful console.
Sure.
As time has gone on, like the Switch is almost 7 years old now, right?
Yeah.
So I think in my mind a hardware update in some capacity to bring it not necessarily up. I don't need it to be as strong as a PS5 or an Asus RX0 or whatever that's called or a Steam Deck, but something that's maybe 3 years outdated rather than 6 years outdated would be fine by me.
Yeah, I mean, 3 years outdated is a PS5, so I mean, we'll see what happens.
Oh God, is it?
Yeah, it's
Brogan, I'm
yeah,
getting old. The
no, it's
passage of time is moving fast.
well, they fucked. Let's not get into the PS5's release schedule. I think there's like dead year. 2020 and then 2021 were like blights of nothing. So it is what it is. Are we ready to talk Variety Minute?
I think I'm ready. I got all my Pikmin fun out. Well, so our Variety Minute this week is games released following the buyout of their IP from the original developers. That is the topic.
Very complicated. Let me ask you first off the bat. How do you feel? We've never talked about this. How do you feel about the Microsoft Activision buyout?
That's like the Disney Fox thing where it's like it's too big. It's like too huge for me to comprehend what's going where.
Yeah.
Because Activision is one of those companies where it's like it's not just Activision. It's Activision Blizzard. It's Activision and Jesus Christ, whatever the hell else they own. You know,
Mm, yeah.
it's such a big company. If it was like Microsoft buys Ubisoft, I'd be like, okay, yeah, I know what Ubisoft makes. I can't even begin to list what Activision makes off the top of my head
Well,
because
I
it's
mean,
one of those like nebulous puppet parent companies, you know?
it's like EA. EA has bought, like, looking at the list of video acquisitions, EA, Take Two.
Mm-hmm.
You know, these motherfuckers buy everything. So it's
Yeah,
fucking terrifying.
yeah. But I think we were starting from a point of like when a because in the vein of Might and Magic was owned by New World Computing, which was a subsidy of 3DO. 3DO very famously went belly up and sold off its IP. And Might and Magic was bought up by Ubisoft, who created Might and Magic 5 and our game of the week, Dark Messiah of Might and Magic.
Mm-hmm.
So, in that vein, another franchise that Ubisoft bought following their company going bankrupt uh, was Myst. Myst
Wow.
3 through 5 were all made by Ubisoft with some input from Cyan Incorporated.
Wasn't there a failed Mist Online?
It wasn't failed, it existed.
It existed.
Yeah. No,
How was that?
there was a Myst MMO, Uru Ages Beyond Myst,
Oh.
which had like 2 expansions, I think.
Mm.
Um,
Okay. Respect on the name.
yeah, and that's like a circumstance of like, who the hell was asking for a Myst MMO? Was it
Yeah.
just a circumstance where Ubisoft wanted to make an MMO and were like, hey, we have the Myst license now. That's a name people recognize. Surely people want to cooperatively explore the worlds of Myst.
Well, it may be one of those things where it's like, so MMOs, especially at that time, were so specifically PC oriented, and Myst is like the motherfucking PC game next to Minesweeper and Solitaire. So like maybe they just saw something we did, you know.
Maybe. I think the other big like IP plucked from the corpse of its developer is like Fallout being
Yeah.
bought by Bethesda.
That was the thing that made me go, what if we do this? Cuz like I think Bethesda went for a much more Elder Scroll style thing, and
They
so
made a Bethesda game.
they made a Bethesda game. So I don't know how you feel about Fallout 3 or anything, but like,
Never played it.
have you played any Fallouts?
I played 4 and then I attempted New Vegas.
One day, Murph. Anyways, yeah, the game just feels so different from Fallouts 1 and 2 in terms of priority and what is possible in a CRPG that, like, I think a lot of people left a bad taste in the mouth. However, I think this is one of the trends in a acquisition or buyout type of game is it found new audiences. You know what I mean? The old audience goes away, the new audience comes back.
Mm-hmm. I think, but it's also just like, because it's one of those things where it's like, if I had never known what Fallout 1 and 2 were, I guess, in my
Mhm.
ignorance of middle school when
Yeah.
that game came out, because from my perspective, everyone that I knew, other middle schoolers to be specific, loved Fallout 3. You
Yeah.
know, and to me, Fallout 3 was like, oh, that's one of those big games everyone likes. And then, like, getting older, getting all on the internet, and finding those, like, actually, Fallout 3 is a horrible game because Fallout 1 and 2 were so different and interesting. You know, situations where it's like, I can understand being upset that you never got the Fallout 3 you envisioned when playing Fallout 2.
I agree. I think it goes into different things. I think Fallout 4 is a better game than 3.
Mm-hmm.
I think 3 was an awkward point in Bethesda's evolution from RPG to more action oriented stuff. We'll see how we feel about Starfield when it happens. But like I think Fallout 4 represents a good ideal for what Bethesda should aim to do with its priorities. don't think Fallout 3 was all the way there, especially with the Gamebryo engine, which was pretty fucking bad. It's the worst part of Fallout New Vegas, that's for damn sure.
Mm.
And the gunplay was stiff and not very inviting. So, really, the best parts of Fallout 3 are just the assets and like the locations and specific moments and quests. But like, that's my take. I don't hate Fallout 3, but it is like it's to me it's the worst main Fallout game.
It's got Liam Neeson's.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
just
All right. Anyways, okay. So let's talk about like how do we feel about how do we feel about ones where it became like a slash? Like Bandai Namco or fucking what is the one? Square Enix. How do you feel anything about those? I
not
guess we're
really,
talking.
because I wasn't cognizant of them being anything but, you know. Because
Yeah,
I always thought it was Square Enix. I didn't know that it was SquareSoft and Enix.
yeah.
um,
I would recommend if you're ever curious. I read up on Aiden Mower's I don't fight magic items, I believe is the title. I'll edit it here if I'm wrong. But it goes over the history of JRPGs, and he talked extensively about the differences at origin of Square and Enix, and then what led to the buyout and just the conditions of that. For them, for fans of the genre, it was unheard of at the time. It was crazy at the time.
and so,
So
what was like the first like Final Fantasy following the acquisition? Was that 7?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what year it happened.
Okay.
We'd have to look it up. Hey there, Brogan from the past. This is Brogan from the future here to just talk quickly about the Square Enix situation. So I should have just said this out loud because I'm not sure if Murphy even picks up on this. So like the real difference was like Enix was responsible for things like Dragon Quest and Square was responsible for things like Final Fantasy. They were competitors at a time. And that's why it was a big deal when like Chrono Trigger happened, because Chrono Trigger was like a sort of creative influence by both companies. So going into it, the year was 2003, and looking at like the Wikipedia list, I'm not necessarily sure by that 2003 window what was like actually developed by Square Enix, or was just like, oh yeah, now that we've merged, Square Enix is technically the name of it or not. But either way, we're looking at like Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles is the first Final Fantasy after that, or like Final Fantasy X-2, just all that sort of stuff. So yeah, no. Also, we're going into 20 years of the Square Enix merger, so that's kind of crazy to think about. And also, I was correct on Aiden Mower's book. The book is called Fight Magic Items: The History of Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, and the Rise of Japanese RPGs in the West. And it is a good book, and I would recommend it. Thank you, and see you next time, y'all. I can edit it here. We'll do that. But either way, like I think it's important. It's what you said is time is a tricky dicky thing where you don't remember what it was like before. You didn't know what Interplay was doing with Fallout. Fuck them.
Yeah, and that's I guess we're kind of living through that now with the Activision acquisition.
Yeah.
Where it's like, down the line, how well am I going to remember the fact that these two entities were separate? Or are we just going to all be buying content from one company?
Yeah, yeah, and explaining that to your kids or some random person on the internet, it's going to be a different world, and then that person will be like, "Well, just because you didn't like it back then, you blah blah blah." You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's different.
I have two other Microsoft examples.
Microsoft bought a lot of motherfuckers.
Yeah, so I think this is my second time using this franchise in a variety minute, but Age of Empires is always interesting to me in the modern age. So Age of Empires 2, pretty popular like esports game. Not necessarily broadcasted, but people like go ham on the competitive side of it. And so Microsoft bought the license for Age of Empires, and then fan modders started working on an HD edition. And Microsoft was like, okay, let's officially sanction this. So they recruited them to Hidden Path Entertainment,
Yeah.
um, which is a small subsidiary. They're kind of they're best known for doing a lot of work with Counter Strike, Source, when that originally came out, and so they made an officially licensed, almost entirely fan created HD edition of Age of Empires 2, and that was really popular. And they released expansions for it, and it got so lucrative that Microsoft like kind of axed Hidden Path Entertainment and brought Age of Empires back into like their main developer hubs, and had the definitive editions like the Ultra HD from the ground up remakes of 2, 3, and down the line, Game of the Decade, Age of Mythology Retold, by Forgotten Realms, and then greenlit a brand new Age of Mythology done by Relic. And so now it's kind of weird. It's not really changed who owns it, but it's now out of the hands of the fans that brought it into the modern age.
I have multiple here. Can I complain about one? Actually, we'll go for. I want to highlight something where it's like it feels like they've always been. Here's one. Sony buying Insomniac. That was a scenario where Insomniac always made Sony games. I think they've made some other stuff, but like especially by like Ratchet and Clank and Spyro the Dragon, it was like they make Sony fucking games. It makes sense. You know, it's much more shocking when Sony buys Bungie versus Insomniac.
Yes. So
you know
I
mean?
was going to say that Halo is kind of a funny inverse of this, where the parent developer didn't sell off the IP. They never owned the IP, so they just left.
Yeah.
And Microsoft was like, well, damn, what do we do with Halo? Let's give it to a studio made entirely to make Halo games. And the result was Halo 4, which I played as part of the Master Chief Collection, and it is probably the least of the Halo games in that collection.
Oh yeah, Halo 4 is bad, and also like I don't like Halo Infinite. I think I like how it plays, and I haven't played its updates. But the time where I played it on launch, I wasn't a big fan of it. It felt bad.
I'm glad you brought up Insomniac, because I found this. Look at this monstrosity. This is the list of developers and publishers for the Spyro the Dragon franchise.
What's that? Huh?
I just sent it in chat. That whole list of developers and publishers all at some point had their hands in the Spyro pie.
IPs are a nightmare. And then when it goes into who owns what, oh my god. And then like if you think about it, for Bungie still had Marathon. They got to kick the old So now Marathon's gonna be a big thing. And then people are gonna be like, oh, that wasn't it? That was a game?
Yeah. And it's not always results in a bad game. As much as us artistic types would love to say, once it was out of the hands of the creators, the franchise got bad. But, you know, we like Blood Omen, Legacy of Kain here. The sequel, Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver, was not made by Silicon Knights. They had to sell the IP to Crystal Dynamics to avoid bankruptcy. And so Crystal Dynamics, in-house, made Soul Reaver, which is a much more famous game than Blood Omen. I'm sure someday we'll do it, because we both like Blood Omen.
Yeah.
But that is a case where, once it was out of the hands of the lead devs, it still resulted in a good game.
And, you know, I want to talk about, I'm going to keep going to Microsoft. Microsoft buying Rare, right? This is probably one of the biggest ones that, like, even today, maybe now, if I explain to, like, an 18-year-old
it's like
the significance of Microsoft buying Rare.
It's like if Sony bought Game Freak now. Because it's just like, I thought this was... like, you go back to the 90s.
This is a motherfucking Nintendo company.
Yeah.
You know?
And Nintendo should have bought Rare ultimately, but they just let them hang.
I wonder why they didn't. That's so bizarre. Anyways,
they just didn't anticipate the power move.
They didn't anticipate the Microsoft. But obviously post buyout, Rare kind of was weird. It was in a weird place. Although I will say I enjoy modern Rare games. Like I like Sea of Thieves, and Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts is like, to me now in 2023, one of the most influential fucking games.
Kind of is. It kind of absolutely
crazy.
is. But it's like Rare in the dark years of the 2000s was struggling to find an identity because they were kind of ripped away from the things that where
Made
their
them.
bread and butter in the 90s. Like, you got Viva Pinata, you got Nuts and Bolts, but mostly when I'm looking at what Rare did, it's a lot of party games, a lot of Connect games,
Mm-hmm.
which is
And
just weird.
that's a lot of it. That's when it's like when you're owned by a company and the company is like, we're gonna push this new product, and the new product sucks because nobody fucking wants to play the Connect.
It's
Then
so
you get
weird.
screwed.
It's so weird in the 2000s, the era of like not attitude the same way attitude was used in the 90s, but like a grotesque attitude.
Yeah.
And on the Xbox, no Conquer game except
Yeah.
for the remake, you know.
Yeah. Oof. Brutal.
Um
Brutal.
you heard about this Embracer group
No. What
and
is
all the cleanup? Okay, so this is something because I was like, I know there have been some weird acquisitions as of late, and I looked it up. This Embracer group, which is this European like holding company. It's one of those companies that just like buys up IP and farms them out to different developers. Be it like they own Dark Horse. They
Is
recently
that the
bought,
Saudi Arabian company?
Saudi Arabia owns 8% of it.
Okay, Saudi Arabia also like fucking, I'm pretty sure, owns all of SNK.
Yeah. So in 2022, Square Enix sold off all its like Western developers.
Oh yeah, Tomb Raider and shit. Yeah.
Yeah. So Embracer Group currently owns Little Nightmares, Goat Simulator, Destroy All Humans, Time Splitters, Darksiders, Saints Row, Duke Nukem, Borderlands, Killing Floor, Deus Ex, and Tomb Raider.
Some
And they
of those
also
are
have
having games now. That's crazy.
yes, and they also bought up the game like production rights for Lord of the Rings, and the first game we've gotten out of that deal is Gollum, and we're also getting that dwarf Mines of Moria survival sim.
Wow.
And
As
Square
we-
said
high
they
quality.
sold off all those assets so they could put more money into games driven by AI and blockchain.
Yeah. I want to say one. This will be my last one.
Okay.
Electronic Arts buying Maxis.
Yes.
This one
This
one's
one actually affected me.
This I don't know if you've got a story. You've got a story here. You're Mr. Spore, right?
Yes.
For me, it's interesting because I think they really abused Maxis's. I think Maxis is a really talented developer that that had a lot of foresight. Especially when we get into when EA made Origin, they really started to fuck over Maxis, and Electronic Arts was one of the first companies to do DRM, always online features, and they would put it in fucking SimCity and really monetize the Sims. And to be clear, the Sims was always monetized, but
But not
they
to this
nickel
degree.
and dimed you. Yes.
Yeah. And that's what, for a while, like, EA's kind of fallen by the wayside as far as villains of the industry go. Like, they're still around, but they're not making BioWare games anymore,
Yeah.
I guess is one way to put it. Like, Sims 4 is still, like, a content farm, and Sims 5 is coming down the line, I guess. But it was, like, really... Because I played The Sims. I played it with my sister. It was one of the games we'd bond over. And like going from Sims 2 to Sims 3 and like all of the expansion packs, all the content packs, and the feeling of FOMO when you load up the game and it's like, hey, do you have the kids stuff pack yet? You should really buy that, child.
Yeah.
I have another EA one, and this kind of gets it. This will be my last thing, but it gets into a different sort of area. as far as licensed games and who
Okay.
owns the developer rights for that, EA had the monopoly on Star Wars games, right?
Yes.
And that recently expired and lapsed. But for a whole period, only EA was making Star Wars games, and what games did we even get out of that? You know, we got a Battlefront remake, which was subpar, a Battlefront remake sequel, which was also subpar, and a TIE Fighter Squadrons game, which was also kind of subpar. And now we're getting stuff like Fallen Order and that Quantic Dream game, which looks crazy, and the Ubisoft open world Smuggler game. And it's like, we could have been awash in very interesting and new and different Star Wars games, but instead it had to go to EA, who wanted to make, microtransaction
Do,
mills.
do you remember? Obviously, you do. Do you remember when Star Wars was for everyone? For
Yeah.
it was a plentiful resource, a plentiful.
Yes. Yes. Bountiful. And then EA came and they damned the rivers.
Exactly. Exactly.
Do not, my friends, become addicted to Star Wars.
Dude, like Battlefront, fucking Jedi Knight Academy, KOTOR, just like
Mm-hmm.
there was a variety. There was any type of game for any time. And honestly, in some ways, they were some of the best Star Wars content. A
Yeah,
monopoly is really harmful creatively for an IP, especially one as culturally broad and important as Star Wars used to be, I guess I should say. And EA really, what the fuck? Part of me wonders if they just wanted to hold on to it to make other people not make them.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, yeah, it's just the ownership thing is such a... Because I feel like Disney is a pretty controlling parent company, right? Like, that's not a
Yeah.
controversial statement. And it's just like, if I'm Disney and I'm seeing these guys aren't doing jack shit with one of my most lucrative properties in the time where we are bringing that lucrative property back to the fore with this whole sequel trilogy, then I would be like, no, you guys don't get that anymore.
Oh,
But
you
they
see.
can't because they own it.
Oh, you see. But then the other thing is like Disney's weird because they want like control in limited things. They want to be able to control the output. So to them, one company making them all, even though
Mm,
it's 3 games in 5 years or whatever, to them that may sound ideal.
I
And
guess that's fair.
and then it's like but then you make bad games to poison your brand. In their head, they didn't want the like they didn't want the episode 2 era. There's fucking 50 games. Oh, there's a Republic Commando around the corner.
Yeah.
To them, for some reason, that sounded bad. But I think that's what creates fans, right?
Mm-hmm.
The prequel trilogy, as much as like I would defend some of it, I'm not sure how many new fans it made. But a
Mm,
Battlefront, like a good fucking Battlefront, would make a fan.
yeah. And my last thing on still on licensed games is, we talk about licensed games and where did they go a lot. And in researching this topic, I was like, did licensed games really die off, or did THQ just go bankrupt? Because genuinely, you look at the list of games THQ put out, it is every licensed game ever. They were making Disney games, they were making Cartoon Network games, they were making Nickelodeon games, they were making Star Wars games. Um, and now all those properties are like mobile games, you know? And were all those games done by THQ good? More often than not, no, but it was something more than a mobile game.
Yeah. Yeah, and then obviously like you'll see things like what's the fucking studio that made Mercenaries?
Oh, I know exactly what you're going to talk about. Mercenary.
Basically like I guess the other thing is it's not only like making them make phone games. Sometimes they'll just shut out a company. We don't need you anymore. It's like, okay, well,
It's
thanks.
just so because gamers love to talk about sequels. Gamers love to talk about sequels. And it's like, why haven't we gotten a Mercenaries 3? And the answer is because the people who own it now don't want to make it. They have no reason to make it. They're not interested in that because they're not the original creators. You know.
It means nothing to them. The only things that Mercenary means to are the original developers and the fans. So if the developers can't make it, the only hope is with fans, you know.
And that's why we start to see a lot of these like kind of fan remake things, like, you know, not this franchise isn't floundering or forgotten, but like Pokemon Infinite Fusions or any number of Pokemon ROM hacks. You know, they're like, Nintendo's not putting out the Pokemon game we want. We will make our own.
Yep. That's just how things work, I guess. All right, Murph. Is it time?
It's time. We must settle the matter of the Dark Messiah of Might and Magic. This episode's a game of the week. A sidebar, real quick. Why do we call it the game of the week when we release these twice a month?
Murph, give me a second. He knows too much. Take him out. Take him.
You can't get me. I'm in my sealed dome. My iconic sealed dome.
Damn it. Okay. Because it's this week. We have a week.
Okay, I see.
Do you want it to be game of the day?
No, only if we go back to calling the Variety Minute the retrospective.
Oh my god. Continue. Just go ahead.
Our game of the week, dubious title, is Dark Messiah of Might and Magic. It is a 2006 first-person stabber developed by Arcane and published by Ubisoft. Following their acquisition of the Might and Magic IP, Ubisoft wanted to see if they could take the franchise in a new direction. So they hired Arcane, fresh off their first game, Arx Fatalis. Arcane took our gameplay concepts they were using for a sequel to Arx Fatalis, which in itself was a spiritual successor to the Ultima series, and repackaged it for Dark Messiah. The game is done in the Source engine and naturally uses physics-based combat with a dedicated kick button. There, we mentioned the kick button. You play as Sereth, a young man raised in isolation by a cult of mages for a dark purpose. Sereth is assigned a succubus Zana and sent to retrieve the legendary artifact known as the Skull of Shadows. Along the way, he meets a mage named Liana, and together they learn his dark origins and equally dark future. With all that said, Brogan, how did you feel about Dark Messiah of Might and Magic?
I think the if there's one takeaway the listener should have about this game, it is that first-person shooters really need a hook, and physics engines were a really good hook.
Mm-hmm. Playing this, it's one of those circumstances. Like, this game came out in 2006. And it's just like, why did we not invest in systems compared to how much we invested in graphics in the prior console gens? Like, you see this now with, like, Tears of the Kingdom and all the wild, like, videos people do for, like, social media and stuff. And it's like, wow, this game lets you do, like, all this crazy physics shit. All these systems just work. And it's like, yeah, we're only just now doing that, but like way back in 2006, I could kick a man into a wall of spikes and that worked. You know?
What is really nice about the physics systems in the kick button is that it allows you to interact with the environment. It allows you to set traps or turn on or like break stuff or literally just kick fucking dudes off a ledge.
Yeah.
And that is so satisfying because you feel the weight to it. The one thing I will say as a positive to the combat, which I will complain about, is that you feel the weight of combat. You feel the sort of back and forth, and you feel the push and pull, you know?
So the combat's intentionally made difficult. Like, the enemies are pretty dang spongy. And that is to get you to interact. Like, you have to approach and problem solve the combat to a capacity. You have to set up traps. You have to use your kick button. You just can't go in swords ablazing.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, like, I have not played Arx Fatalis. One game that this reminded me of a lot was Thief. Thief was like, oh,
The
this
original.
game feels... Yeah, the original
Not
Thief.
the one put out by Ubisoft following their acquisition of the IP.
Yeah, no, goddamn. Anyways, obviously you mentioned the rope bow when I said that to you in DMs, but what made me think that, because I had not gotten to the rope bow yet at that point, was the sneaking around and then hearing the henchmen talk to each other, them dropping story bits, and then having you be able to interact with the scenario your way. Obviously, Dark Messiah is less stealth focused, although you can be stealthy. But fundamentally, it is that weight, and it also fundamentally, it is the do not just get in a sword fight with 10 dudes in one room. That is an awful idea. Don't do that.
Yes, absolutely.
And in those ways, it felt vividly like Thief, because that's not how you play Thief either.
I think... So, it's a good framework, right? And if we're going to start transitioning into issues with the game, because I think we both have them, I will say the game kind of has that Green Hill Zone effect, where starting off the first couple areas, it's really fun, you're into it, you're like, man, I've got a kick button, I've got like a sword and a bow and all these spells, and I'm fighting dudes at the moment, but maybe I won't always be fighting dudes. And then as the game goes on, it's like, oh, I'm just fighting dudes, and I still have a sword, and I still have the same spells, and I still have a kick button, and it's just recycling the same kind of combat encounters again.
And then the things get worse too. It's like I'm doing these things, and then it's like I'm trying to upgrade as much as I can. Like I like the milestone element to it. But okay, there's so much to talk about in different ways. I think the game gets worse. The time where I was like, okay, I am done with this game. This game is wearing out its welcome is after Spider Island, really. And also just in general, like after the reveal and when you get the demon powers, I was like, okay, it's like, okay, I think we're done here. But there was still hours to go.
The pacing is kind of off because it's one of those games that like is just about what feels like it would be Act 1 for a larger story. Yeah. It's like you are assigned, hey, go get the Skull of Shadows. You get the Skull of Shadows. Learn you're the Dark Messiah. Go stop the bad man, you know? There's not really time for any of the plot points to really, or set pieces to really rest and settle because this game only has 10 levels.
Yeah.
And most of them are set at the Temple of the Skull of Shadows.
Yep.
You know, and it just kind of wears out its welcome. And again, you're just doing the same kind of encounters again and again. Like, the most exciting part for me is when you're on, like, the cliff sides. Yeah. And mainly because your kick button gets a lot of action there, you know?
Yep. When you really start seeing the orcs for the first time, and you're going through the temples and you're dungeon crawling, you're like... To me, like, it wasn't necessarily the start. It was there where I was like, fuck yeah, this game is fucking killing it, yo. And you're really using the rope bow and all that. Although I will say, I think one of the big problems physics-wise is climbing. I think it's a little clunky, especially with ladders.
Bad climbing in a Source game?
Yeah. They never cracked that code, did they?
No.
But it goes back to not only is it like not new things are introduced, but when you look at the tech tree, it's not forgiving enough, because there are points where it's like, man, I really need these things. There's some things that feel clearly essential, and they just cost way too many points when you need to put them in other things.
You
and
really
then,
have to spec. You can't.
Yeah, you have to
be
be smart about
jack of all
spec
trades.
Yeah, it's brutal. And I ended up going for like a mage build with the bare essentials in combat and thieving. And
I went full on combat. I put everything into strength. I wielded the mightiest swords. I had a great time.
I had less than a great time, but I guess we'll talk about it. But like ultimately, it goes to the powers don't get super good after ice. Once you get ice, that's the peak, because you can freeze an enemy and then you can freeze the ground where they trip and fall. And that leads to some good ragdoll physics. But like the fireball is just like an RPG. It blows people up. Like the lightning doesn't really do a lot. These things are way less effective in the physics. So there's really nothing to look forward to. And then the big surprises of the second half of the game are... So basically, there's like two big sorts of enemies that are like, oh my god, is the fucking dragon and is the Cyclops. But then they keep bringing them back.
Absolutely.
And
yes, I was going to bring that up.
so when they're brought back, I mean, it's cool that it's like, so originally optional, now you have to address the Cyclops or yada yada yada. But at a certain point, they get old and you've seen all the gimmicks. You've seen all the tricks.
Yeah, and like the best they can do really is like have a demon mode, except don't use it to like in front of NPC allies, because they'll attack you.
Which will be a third of the rest of your playtime. Yes.
And it's like, also looking at the skill tree, it's like, you got anything other than the kick button? Ultimately, like, yeah, the kick button's fun. It's what you're mainly going to be doing. Did you have any other ideas? You know, because like, it doesn't feel like there's that many ways to approach a combat encounter, because like I said, those enemies are so spongy. They want you to find like shortcuts and sneaky ways of doing things, but ultimately the sneaky way of doing things is stand by the wall of spikes and let the enemies queue up in front of you so you can kick them into the wall of spikes.
And I mean, I'm gonna be real. I think I stopped doing that probably at the demon power point. And I tried the demon powers and I was like, yo, this is clunky combat. It's not great.
No.
So what I ended up doing for that last section, especially when you're in the Wizard Temple, because the Wizard Temple was like the hardest part for me. I ran. That's what I did. I skipped it. Because the enemies don't provide experience. All it is milestones. So I just go to the next area as soon as I can. I charge an enemy to draw aggro. I freeze an enemy right in front of me if they're about to hit me, and I just fucking run. And I have like 20 mana potions, and I have heals, and I have like a bunch of fucking things. So I'm not worried about it. I can tank it.
Yeah.
So I just do that, and that's how I beat the rest of the game. Although the fucking final boss with the fucking pulling dragons out of his ass, that was a little tough, but I got through it.
Yeah. And part of like, so they don't introduce any new enemies. They also don't introduce any new weapons, you know? Because you can investigate, like, there's secret areas, and secret areas have powerful weapons, but they're not that secret, and the powerful weapons you find are the same powerful weapons you will find in every secret area. So by the third level, I had the flame sword, I had the lightning daggers, I had
They just keep showing up,
Yeah, and they keep showing up, and there's nothing to do with them. It feels like this game needs like a merchant character, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I like certain of the side quest things. Like I like how the things are hidden, and I like the forging with the blacksmith stuff, but it's never really paid off super well. There is one thing we didn't do, because I know we were both evil, is there's like the divine set that you could use if you've been purged. Apparently that's the best set in the game, but I was like, fuck that, I'm going evil, yo.
Yeah. It's basically an easy mode in a way because the divine set does a lot of damage to undead, which is primarily what you'll be fighting in the back half of the game.
Yeah. But like that being said, it's like I don't know. Also, you take a lot of damage by the end. Like for me, I don't know about you because you spec'd into combat, but like I would get hit. I would die in like 3 hits by anything by the end, and I was like, "Yo, I can't fucking."
Or you're poisoned.
I can handle the poison. Poison was never a problem.
Oh,
But
okay. The spiders are no fun to fight in this game.
I don't fight them. I ran.
Okay, you know what that is? You ran past them. They had 8 legs and they couldn't catch up to you in your quickness.
Literally. And then I didn't fight the giant spider either. The only thing that really poisoned me was the worm. The worm poisoned me.
Oh yeah, there is a worm.
But I had 10 antidotes, so it was all chill.
I forgot about the worm.
Yeah.
I think. So how do you feel about this game's aggressive mid 2000s story?
I think it is very clearly like I don't know if marketing was like let me write the story, but just from the way it presents itself and then the characters, specifically the women, it just feels like they just wanted to advertise those elements, especially the succubus. I don't remember her name. Xana's her name. And then, but like, I say the good girl, quote unquote, the blonde, Leanna is her name.
Yeah.
I hate the escorts because it's the one time where I had to
fight.
Because they can't fight because they fucking die in 2 hits. So I had to like have them sit in a corner while I do everything. I hated that, and she is not super pleasant. So when she was dying by the spider, I was like, "You can die by the spider. Farewell.
Live by the spider, die by the spider." Yeah. So, all right, it's time for Murph to talk about Might and Magic lore.
Oh my god, go ahead.
All right. So Might and Magic is like one of the first game franchises I had any exposure to, right? This is a very integral part of who Murph is. I'm not good at any of the games, but it is like not just like one of the first games, it's also like one of the first fantasy settings I've ever been exposed to. And a huge thing about Might and Magic is that they would do like DC Comics in-universe reboots for like almost every new game.
Okay.
And so when Ubisoft acquired the license, they were like, okay, we're doing that. We're saying this game, the games going forward take place on an entirely new like planet. And so the Heroes 5 had this whole plot building up to the birth of the Dark Messiah, right?
Yeah.
And I had played all the Heroes 5 campaigns and the expansions and stuff, and actually Zana and what is his damn name? Arantir, the necromancer, he's also in that. He's actually the protagonist of one of the campaigns.
Okay.
But I had never played this. And so Heroes 5 is basically all set up for the Dark Messiah being birthed. And then this comes out, and I'm playing it, and I'm like, this doesn't feel like this takes place in the same universe whatsoever. You know? And this gets in kind of like petty fan things, but it really does feel like Arcane had a fantasy, like immersive sim RPG hack and slash they were working on, and then slapped a Might and Magic IP over it, you know?
Sure. Yeah.
Like if you look up screenshots of what Heroes 5's like art style looks like, it's much more like Warhammer or Warcraft inspired, very big, colorful designs. And then this is just like Source Engine humans.
Yeah.
And so in that capacity, it kind of let me down, especially the fact it doesn't really resolve any threads, you know?
No, I was shocked by the endings because I played both endings of the evil path. Where like you're like, yes, dad, let's rule together, and then the no, fuck you, dad. And
I
both
did.
of
I
them
did the no
ends.
fuck you, dad.
I did. I just rolled back the save and did them both just so I could see them. And they're both bad. They're both bad endings. It's terrible.
Yeah. Well,
It's just
ends.
unimpressive.
Like you were asking me before we started recording, what happened to that wizard who raised you and initiated the plot? Oh, he doesn't show up again. Um,
It seemed like he had like a plan, but I guess his plan was to revive the Dark Lord. That was his plan, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh,
So it all worked
sure. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. And it's very interesting looking at what the other Heroes or Might and Magic games that Ubisoft put out after this, because Hero 6 is a prequel. Hero 7 is a prequel to that prequel. They have not moved past anything that would be following the plot of Dark Messiah.
Dark Messiah is the end point. It's the last thing to have happened.
It kind of is, and since the games, every Might and Magic game is actually like in continuity in a way, it's also the end point of the entire franchise.
That is a common thing of like, I don't want to say failed games, but like Street Fighter 3, originally a failed game. That was the end point until Street Fighter 6. And also Devil May Cry 2. Devil May Cry 2 was famously the end point before Devil May Cry 5. And because it was so bad, they were like, literally, Devil May Cry 3, prequel. That's what they did.
Really?
That's the way to do it. Yeah. I think it's just a way to get around it for a lot of it.
Well, also,
but one day someone will fondly remember this game, and I like this game. I would recommend the first 4 hours of this game.
if this had like a PS1 demo disc, I would recommend that demo disc.
Yeah, dude, that would be a sick first 3 levels. Yeah.
And you could spend the rest of your life imagining what the rest of the game looks like. And guess what? 100%. It's just the same 3 levels recycled.
I'm shocked that they brought the town back at the end. I was like, really? This is what we're doing?
Yeah. And that's one of those circumstances where I was like, this town is not in any of the other games. None of these like locations or name drops are in any, like, not even in any of their games. Anything in Heroes 5, which is ostensibly setting up this plot, you know? And that was just weird to me. Like I said, Zana's in Heroes 5 and Heroes 6, actually, now that I think about it, as one of the demonic commanders.
Let me ask you, because this is the one thing that I felt and I don't think was addressed also. Is Zana, like, ambitious on her? It feels like she's ambitious on her own. Because, like, at the very end, she's like, throughout the entire game, she's like, you should be evil with me. And also by the end, it's like, don't revive your Satan dad. Let's be evil together.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if it's like, because like when I played the ending where you save the dad, he's not killing you like she said he would. He is like, let us rule the world together as father and son, which is the dream. Wow, I saved my father. But to me, it feels like she has her own plan.
She just kind of is like a succubus, so she just wants. It's kind of like how demons work in Heroes 5, because in previous Might and Magic games, the demons are aliens. Okay. That's the great secret of Might and Magic as a franchise, is it's actually a sci-fi series.
Okay.
But in Heroes 5 continuity, the demons are just demons, but they're all locked up in the demon realm. So the demons that are out are either just trying to make their own way outside of the demon hierarchy, or they're trying to free all the trapped demons.
Gotcha.
And so Zana is kind of one of those ones that plays both agendas.
Gotcha.
I do like that this game, like, it's big because, you know, we're in the mid-2000s. We got to have moral choices. Its big moral choice comes down to, do you like good girls or do you like bad girls?
That's some fucking game magazine. I would love to see a Dark Messiah, like, Game Informer ad page. I want to see the advertisements for this game.
Yeah. I ultimately went with Zana because her voice actress just sells it. Like, she goes whole hog in everything is a double entendre.
Yeah.
Everything. Whereas
She's
Leanna,
she's like evil Cortana, which
yes,
works.
yes, that
Whereas
works.
Leanna is like
You did a really good
unpleasant
job.
escort. I'm like, okay, yeah, we're done. To the spider you go. What I'm
Yeah,
saying?
you can go down into the spider pit and just kill her there. Um,
Oh, I didn't.
and it's funny because Sareth says, like, Sareth's not really characterized. I kind of wish he was silent, like Gordon Freeman. But in
Mhm.
that moment, if you go down to the spider pit, kill the spider, and find Leanna, you can actually just kill her there. And Sareth says, "Be gone, wench! You shall distract me no more."
See, I like that. I don't know. To me, this game, the way the game is built, feels like this is like another Blood Omen case where it feels appropriate that the Dark Messiah is evil. I don't
Yeah.
think it plays well that the Dark Messiah is secretly good inside. No, let's fucking rule the world. I want to complain about some elemental stuff. I don't feel like the weapons were particularly useful. Like the ice weapons, the fire weapons, the poison bows. Like I would get 20 fucking things and I would barely use them because I'd be like, "Oh, this doesn't do a lot of damage. Let me kick them."
Use a spell or kick.
Yeah. Spells were the most useful thing, but then I would get scrolls. But I guess scrolls are to supplement a Murph who did not invest in spells. I guess that's the point. But
Yeah, but they also don't consume mana when you cast them. So
I didn't have a problem with mana though.
exactly because mana potions are everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things where they have like an elemental damage system, like orcs and goblins take more damage from electricity. They resist fire. Humans take more damage from fire, and undead are just a pain unless you spec into holy weapons. Um, and again, it's like there's the suggestion of a much more deep, more immersive sim type combat where you're like planning encounters, you're thinking on the fly, you're improvising, but ultimately just kick things off a ledge.
That is the way.
And it's fun to kick things.
I was so upset when when you put the crystal in the spider temple, and then the orc comes and he's like, "I've been sent here to protect this temple for centuries.
Yeah.
Let us fight mano y mano. No magic or tricks." And I'm like, "Oh, I actually have to fucking fight this guy? This
Yeah.
is terrible."
Mm-hmm.
What?
And it's like there is like a parry system, which is kind of neat in the beginning before enemies start dealing half your health bar.
Yeah.
Also because healing's a pain unless you get the heal spell.
Yeah. Which I did. So.
Yeah. It's just like it feels so much more like a suggestion or a tech demo for something.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it really speaks to Ubisoft bought this franchise because it was popular and it had gamer cred, and they didn't know what to do with it. And
Let
so
me
they put
ask
out,
you. Go ahead.
Mhm.
Finish
It's
your
just,
thought.
they put out Heroes 5, which is my favorite Heroes of Might and Magic game. Well, partly for nostalgic reasons, but I also think it's just kind of the most like optimized and fun of them. And then they didn't put out a new Might and Magic game, like the thing the series started with, until like 2013. And it was a very small, like, single A production. And then they also put out this, which was like, hey, Might and Magic's now like a first person shooter, you know?
Let me ask you, how do you feel about Arcane's design here? How do you feel about it in terms of level design?
So earlier this year, I played Deathloop. Remember that?
I remember that. That feels like a lifetime ago.
And Deathloop has a kick button.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know what? It does very much feel like an Arcane game. Like, I could see the skeleton of Dishonored on this.
Yeah.
Very much so, especially with the sword combat, with, like, the parrying and stuff. I'd be curious to see if it's like, no, Dishonored's not done the Source engine. I was about to say, like, the same engine. But
Dishonored's also very Thief-like, so.
Yeah. As an Arcane game, it just... I think it definitely does feel like something where a smaller, more indie studio was given a big IP from a big developer, from a big publisher, and said, make us a product. Don't make us a game you want, make us a product. And so it kind of has, it's like when the MCU gives a notable director a like or something like hey, Ryan Coogler, make us a sequel to The Lion King. And he's like, "Okay." you know,
I'm gonna give you exactly what you asked for and nothing else.
and no more or less.
Um,
you know.
I think the level design is good. I wanted to compliment that, especially with the ruins. I like the dungeon crawling aspects. I like the lighting. The first spell you get is a way to see in the dark, which is a problem in the Source engine. Like lighting is tough.
Yeah. But
Um,
I think it's harmed by a lot of backtracking.
eh, eh. It's fine. I don't mind the level design. There's a lot of shortcuts and like ways to get through it fast, especially like I don't know. I ran through the second half, so there's not a lot of backtracking in the second half.
I guess
Like
that is true, yeah.
there's a lot of shortcuts, and then in the first half, I don't know. I don't think there's a lot. I think it's fine.
I think the first half, again, as we keep saying, it's that Green Hill Zone thing because the game is more set up to be fun. It's like you're fighting dudes in a storage room in a warehouse. And it's like, oh, I can shoot out that platform so it collapses on these guys,
Yeah.
or I can
And
kick them into a fire.
orcs and goblins are better than spiders and zombies.
Mm-hmm. It also just those blackguards guys. I love their voices. Hey, pal.
Yeah.
you know. Um, and like in the start, the game feels dynamic because dudes will get injured and they'll try to run away and call for help, and that
Mm-hmm.
rapidly goes away as your ability to kill them becomes more efficient.
Yeah. But I do like their scream as they fall off.
It's a
Those are
fun
good.
comedy game. I won't downplay that. Like the kick button is fun, but it's all the game has for me, you know.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Wow.
okay, can we get some other limbs employed here?
Yeah. I think we're wrapping up, Murph.
I do. I've always heard that this game was wild and fun, and it's like one of the few Might and Magic games I never played, and I'm just kind of walking away. I'm impressed with it, and again, there's that feeling of like, man, it feels like games now are only like just now catching up with a lot of really cool, inventive stuff done in the early 2000s, but instead we invested in graphics. Um, it's like,
Especially for shooters, because I think shooters are meant to feel immersive. And
yeah,
like the one thing this game also did, and this goes back to the physics thing, is it made me appreciate Half-Life 2 more. I go,
mm,
wow, Half-Life 2 really fucking did it right, didn't it?
Half-Life 2, like, we talked about it. Like, Half-Life 2 has all this gameplay variety. You got the car level, you've got the level you're commanding the sand bugs, you've got the turret level. This game doesn't have that. It just has the kick button.
Yeah.
And that's just very underwhelming, and it's sad. It makes me sad.
The game's not that long though. I will say I thought this game was going to be longer than it was.
No, you can get it done real quick. In fact, you did just before we recorded.
I did. Well, I mean, in the past week, well, like before this, I had gotten up to the rope bow at a certain point, and then like as of yesterday, I got to the devil part, and then as I was getting here, I was like on 8 and 9. And I was like, oh shit, I just got to go through it. But it can go fast. If you're running, it can go fast. And then there's times where you gotta like turn the dial. And I just use stone skin. I use stone skin, and then I just turn the dial, and then I charm the guy attacking me, and then I move. That's all I did.
There you go. That's using your system mechanics. That's using your noodle. I'd love to watch a speed run of this game actually.
Oh yeah, I think I saw the speed run's like 15 minutes.
That's crazy. Yeah, I might look that up after we're done talking here.
But until then, Murph, what do we got going on?
We have things going on. I will always plug my other podcast. This podcast is a bad idea. The last episode we recorded was on the 57 rules of the internet. And this month's episode is one that is hurting me greatly inside. We are watching the series Video Game High School, which is, of course, relevant to the listeners of this podcast.
Damn.
That is something my co-host requested because I had never heard of this. It is a... it is what it sounds like, and it gives me great cringe. So tune into that for the decompress on that.
Oh my goodness. And I would tell everyone to check out our YouTube channel. We've got more Brawl episodes incoming, I promise. And then I also have been making short little game reviews. Instead of putting them into the Whatcha Playin, this was already 2 hours. So I was like, what if I just make videos instead?
Yeah. Sometimes we play too many games.
That is what it is. But what is the next game on our docket?
The next game, Brogan, we always broadcast live from the Satellite of Dreams, but the Satellite of Dreams has actually been trapped in another realm this entire time, canonically. For, you see, we are still lost within the island and the realms of Mist, and we never got out. And we need to leave, and maybe we will find the way by going to Riven, the prequel to Mist 3 Exile.
Okay. That's exciting. And the prequel to Uru, I'm guessing.
No, maybe. Actually, I think Uru's a prequel to Mist as a whole.
Well, never mind. All right, everybody. Till next time.
Till next time.